Welcome to the Real Love podcast series, right here on the Sharon Salzberg Metta Hour. This series features a variety of conversations with the world's finest thinkers and teachers, exploring Sharon's latest book, Real Love, The Art of Mindful Connection.
Hi, I'm Sharon Salzberg, and today I'm speaking to Congressman Tim Ryan, who is a great voice for mindfulness. He's a national leader, and we're friends. We originally met in Wisconsin several years ago. We were both at an event that Dr. Richie Davidson was offering in celebration of the opening of his new center as part of the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Tim Ryan serves in the U.S. Congress representing Ohio's 13th District. He was first elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2002 and was sworn in on January 3rd, 2003. He's been successfully reelected 7 times and is now serving his 8th term. Congressman Ryan has been reelected 7...
Oh, is it just under twice?
Okay. Congressman Ryan currently serves as a member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee and is co-chair of the Congressional Manufacturing Caucus. You've probably seen him on TV championing efforts to make college more affordable, to revitalize America's cities, and to improve the health and well-being of American families and children. Congressman Ryan is the author of A Mindful Nation, How a Simple Practice Can Help Us Reduce Stress, Improve Performance, and Recapture the American Spirit, which was published in 2012. So I love this quotation of yours, which goes, "The mindfulness revolution is not quite as dramatic as the moonshot, but I believe in the long run, it can have just as great of an impact." So that's an incredible statement. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I just feel like there are certain things that shift the way that people see the world, and the moonshot was a very dramatic moment for the country. Just the engineering of the whole deal, but kind of reorienting us to where we are in the world and being able to get a picture looking back to us and landing on the moon and having that success. I think it shifted what the possibilities were for us as a country. And I think, right now, instead of going outward, the movement to go inward and to understand ourselves more and better and deeper of what's happening with us is going to be dramatic in a lot of ways. Clearly not as much as the moonshot, but helping us figure out what the hell's going on. We've got so much happening that we're all disoriented, in the world, and we're disconnected in the world, even though we have all this technology. And to me, contemplative practices and going inward and trying to understand how we are and our anxieties and our fears and everything that spill out into the public realm that we see every single day very prominently on our political discourse. And that can shift that. And if that shifts, that's going to be a monumental shift and a monumental achievement for us, because it feels like this has been going on for such a long time in the country.
That's true. One of the books I quote in my book, Real Love, is Bowling Alone, and about how so many of the social structures of this country and ways we used to come together, they've kind of dissolved or they've weakened in a lot of ways, and it's harder to find one another very directly. And we need to, in some way, I think, create new forms for many people, not everybody, but some people are still very much rooted in their traditional ways of coming together, but a lot of people are not. And I guess that's part of what that hunger for social media is trying to address.
Yeah. And the fact that it stimulates, the same part of your brain that gets stimulated when you do drugs.
That helps.
Yeah, that kind of helps. But yeah, I think we're looking for that connection, and That's why the reflection inward can help us say, okay, what am I really looking for here? What's the goal? What am I trying to do? Why am I not happy? Why am I not satisfied? Why am I not fulfilled? Why am I not content? And you can't figure that out until you go inward. And so then that shifts in all of these outwardly things that you think satisfy you, and maybe they do for a few seconds or a few moments. Consumerism, the draw to your social media. The other thing too that I'm getting more concerned about is this notion that we are perfect and everything's okay. Like our Facebook pages are like a real account of who we are. I'm going to put this picture up because I look good, and not this one and not that one. A lot of that stuff's normal, but young kids growing up, everything's got to be perfect. And if it's not, that expectation, then it could really damage you, and it prevents you from building resiliency that you need to overcome bad things that happen or tough challenges that you may face.
It's really true. It's somebody said to me, well, no one puts up a photograph of their mediocre lunch. It's got to be like better than everyone else's.
Yeah.
And really sublime. And then we put it up, and we're always comparing our experience to others.
And that's it, in compare, which it just gets amplified. I mean, it's stuff that always happened. People always compared themselves to each other, but it's just this constant barrage of everybody trying to one up each other. And, I'm here. And, I know in the mindfulness world, people talk about this. You're taking a picture, I'm here, you're tweeting, I'm there, I'm this, I'm that. And well, are you really there? Because it sounds like you're just a reporter. You're not really experiencing, you're too busy tweeting about it to really be in the moment where you are.
I know. Many years ago, I was in Hawaii with my friend Joseph Goldstein, and we were lying on a beach, and I was reading a copy of James Michener's book, Hawaii. And Joseph said, I think you should put it down, look around. This is where you are.
Right.
So it's a modern version of that. So there's another quotation of yours I really love. As you know, I separated my book into 3 interconnected parts. The first is about love of oneself, which is not narcissism, but like kind of self-respect. The second section is love for an other, whoever that other might be, child, parent, partner, whatever. And the third is love in a larger sense of community. And this is your quotation. I've been on enough sports teams in my life to have experienced the magic of what can happen when a group of people care for and love each other. And this seems like when people come together to work for the common good, when it's the maybe idealistic vision of coming together in a campaign of some kind, that couldn't that be grounded in love and caring and compassion?
Yeah, that's actually a theme that I've, in the last few months, I've kind of dusted off and brought back and try to use a lot. And I try to use it, not when I'm just talking to groups of meditators or religious people, but to, use that idea when I'm talking to unions. And I tell them, I said, like I tell my kids, I said, you don't always have to like each other, but you got to love each other. And, you're going to have arguments, fights, disagreements, differences of opinion. But if you don't care about each other and respect each other and love each other at some deeper level, it's just not going to work. And we had that, I think, coming out of World War II, a generation that came out of the Depression and war and rebuilding the country and creating a new economy and all of that. It was almost seared into their minds and their bodies and their souls that, we're in this thing together.
That's right.
And all Americans. And then, we have just kind of faded out of that as we lost that generation. And, there was just not to get overly sentimental about it, but there was a real connection there. and there was a connection to the land. I mean, we were very agrarian, and that started to change. And even if you lived in a city or a suburban area, you had a garden, you were connected, and you were, you lived with your grandparents and your kids. It was like 3 generations of people that lived in the same home and took care of each other until the day they died, or, even giving birth in homes. I mean, it just on and on. I mean, breastfeeding your kids and passing down that wisdom over the generations, and how to do things, how to raise the kids and how to raise a garden, all these things. And so that just slowly has faded away. And that's what I mean when I say we've gotten disconnected from those traditions that we would pass down. And now here we are, look at us. I mean, it's just my friend who writes for the Youngstown Vindicator had a great column. He's from Buffalo, which is very similar to Youngstown, where we're from. And he had this great phrase in one of his columns a few years back. And he said, I grew up on my parents' front porch, and now I come home and we all go to our back porch with our fenced-in yard. And it just kind of captures the kind of connectivity that we had for so long in our communities. And now we all just retreat to our back porch that's fenced in and, have a beer after work by ourselves,
Yeah. Well, kind of the urban equivalent of that, somebody said to me, they used to love being in New York City because you could just strike up a conversation with all these people, a street vendor, a taxi cab driver, whatever. And now, except for the person who's driving, everybody is on their phones, and you sit in a park and people aren't talking to each other or looking at each other. And it was those random encounters which were so enriching for her, and just having a sense of a larger community. Well, I think we, of course, see the effects of the divisiveness and it's really disconnection. We are so disconnected from this earth and from one another. And it seems to be that's one way that meditation can have a very powerful role, hopefully, in the body politic, in civil discourse and in the question of engagement. We can really learn to have more interest and compassion for one another.
Yeah. And listen, listen to each other. I mean, it's okay for someone to have a different opinion of things than you have. And, you just may learn from somebody, and you may not be in a complete agreement, but they may help you look at something differently. And maybe within that new view that you have, there's some solution that maybe you could even agree on together. And I've been doing this long enough now that there are good people who I think have really terrible approaches to things, and I get upset that they can't see it the way I see it, And but and it doesn't mean you don't argue about it either. That's what we're here for. We're here to have. You don't have to hate people, but you can forcefully state your point of view as you see it. And that's like try to tell. Look, this is the truth as I see it, and I feel strongly about it because this is how I see the truth. And here's my argument. And at the end of the day, you win or I win or your legislation passes or mine does. It doesn't mean we have to get rid of the humanity that we have. And I tell you, Sharon, I just think we're at a point where we've got to, before there's any economic plan or political plan, like if we don't slow down and get some quiet time, that we're continuing to disintegrate and the systems are disintegrating. And if we're going to pull it back together, we got to slow down, reconnect with what our values are, and then build a political system or an economic system based on us reconnecting to those values, which that World War II generation had. Because they were operating from shared values and what the world needed to look like and what the economy needed to look like. And, out of that, you got America with a new role in the world, and you got Medicare and Social Security and like dignity for our seniors, and that led to the Great Society, where it was about housing and civil rights and a little more justice to the economy and to our society. That all came out of those values. And now I don't know if we know what those values are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see it and people throw it around with freedom and liberty and all this stuff. But do we really have a common set of values as a country that we all agree on? And if we don't, we better really put some intention behind figuring out what those are and then get grounded in them. And then legislation and other things come out. I mean, not to get too deep into this, but if you look at some of the things Richard Nixon passed when he was president, he signed the EPA into law. He was working on getting us out of Vietnam. I mean, it's obviously tough to talk about Nixon without, especially in today's environment with Watergate and everything else. But his legislative agenda, community development block grants for cities. We were coming from, the federal government has a responsibility to do some of these things.
Right.
And that was because we all shared our values. And then, obviously things shifted. And so now we have more polarization. But that's the point. It wasn't Democrat or Republican. It was, we were all operating from values. And yeah, there were some differences, but he was proposing and implementing the same things that John Kennedy was trying to and implement because their values were the same.
Yeah, and he does seem really progressive as we look back. It's kind of amazing. And I think you've inspired me, actually, and made me think also that that kind of communication has to begin at home, more or less, like in kind of local communities, and build and build and build and build and keep expanding, because it's right. With our neighbors, we're not finding each other. We're not exhibiting that sense of connection. And, we hold it sometimes in the abstract, like meditator dedicating their efforts to the happiness and the safety and the security of all beings everywhere, But what about that person down the street, who's kind of annoying? And really coming together in all kinds of levels.
Yeah. Well, that's really the test. I mean, that's obviously that you talk about in almost all of your books, and in any session that I've been with you in, meditation session, you mention it. And it's not about the practice so much as it is taking the practice off the cushion and into the world. I mean, that's the hard part. It's easy to make a foul shot when you're, by yourself in a gym. It's a little harder when there's 50,000 people screaming at you to miss it.
Yeah.
So you gotta do the practice so that when you get into that moment, you've got something to fall back on.
How's the Quiet Time Caucus going? You still doing it?
Yeah, it's slow. We're not getting a whole lot of, participation. Our staff weekly sessions are still pretty well attended. We had some folks in a few weeks ago. We had a really cool session with the Art of Living folks. They have a group called Project Welcome Home Troops, and they call it a power breath workshop, where they do a lot of deep breathing and meditation to help the vet process a lot of their trauma. Because some of them, they're carrying so much trauma that they can't just sit and meditate.
Right.
There's too much going on. And so the deep breathing, which is a series of Kriya Yoga breaths over the 6-day period, really helps them process the trauma, so that then they can then sit and find some quiet, which is really cool. Anyway, they came in, and we probably had 6 or 7 different members of Congress come and participate in a 2-day program.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, so it's I feel like I'm digging a ditch. It's like with a spoon. But it's worth it, because you see guys and women that say, "Oh my God, this is so good for me. I needed this so bad." And that's just like after a 2-hour session, of deep breathing and some meditation, and it's great, and it's coming along.
That's fabulous. I'm going to England pretty soon, and there are, I think, 40 members of Parliament that are coming together, and John Kabat-Zinn's coming, and it's all
I
about,
know.
it's all
I'm
about
so
meditation.
sad I can't make it.
Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah, Chris Ruane, and
that's right.
Yeah, I would love to. I wanted to come, but it's in the middle of a work week here. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's so cool. That's a great example because they have members from different political parties that all came together and wrote, the kind of UK mindfulness book on everything that they're doing and all the benefits that it can have in society. It was very cool. So we're going to keep plugging away, though. It's amazing out in the world. I got to tell you, people grab me all the time, and they're like, "I read your book," or I started meditating, or they don't grab me about well, they do, but not as much. About I got a pothole, or can you fix this road, or it's like I started meditating. Boy, it's really, really helpful for me. And that's so gratifying to see them empowered to be able to take care of themselves.
That's fantastic. I've got a pothole. That's very funny. Is that a congressional matter, or is that sounds like the mayor or something?
Sometimes, yeah. Well, they grab the guy they see on TV. So, Sharon, I'm going to have to sneak out.
Yeah, I see that. I heard that. Wonderful. Thanks, dear.
All right, Sharon. Thanks.
Bye-bye. The bell you heard ringing was Congressman Ryan being called to a vote. And so we're going to try to reschedule another session where we can just continue our conversation.
Thank you for listening. For more information about Sharon's many offerings and her teaching schedule, please visit her website at SharonSalzberg.com.